Hi folks, welcome to another edition of Gardening 101. Today we're going to talk about potatoes and onions, how to plant them, a little bit about each of them, and kind of go from there. Potatoes go way back to my very earliest rememberings when I was a kid. One of my first jobs in the garden with my mother was to take a little soup can with some kerosene in the bottom and walk up and down the potato rows, picking the potato bugs off, dropping them in the kerosene, and that was days before there were a lot of insecticides out there and available for garden use. Later on came Garden Guard, Rotenone, which was a godsend to a lot of gardeners to take care of some of the insects in the gardens. So let's talk a little bit about potatoes. A great vegetable, root vegetable, of course, and one that does well in our area, does a super job. It can be planted in the ground or in containers if you like, and we'll talk about both. Talk a little bit about varieties. Basically there is the Pontiac type variety, there is red, white, and baking. Depending on what you want. Our two most popular varieties are a red one called Pontiac or Norland, and the white one, Kennebec, is probably the best seller, and the Burbank Russet is probably the best for the russets. The reds are the best producers. The white follow, and the russets follow that, and will do a nice job for you. Of course, we talked about soil preparation earlier. We want to make sure your garden is well tilled, worked in, got the organic matter in place and everything else. Now, gardens in our area tend to be very high in clay. Oftentimes you'll see planting that potato set 3 or 4 inches below the ground. And over the years, I've discovered that that does not work if you have heavy kind of soil, and I do in my garden. So instead, I plant relatively shallow. Now, I'll start with a potato like this. And each potato has an eye, and that's where the new growth is going to come from. And there will be several on each potato. And really what you just need to do is take a good sharp knife and cut out these eyes so you have a nice chunk of potato like this with an eye in it. And then you're going to plant that, of course, with the eye pointing up and go from there. And the way I like to do it in my garden is to just line the row out, make a very shallow trench, maybe 2 inches, 3 inches deep, and then go along and drop these in place. About every 10 inches, if you have lots of room, up to a foot, you can probably go as close as 8 inches, and it'll do a nice job for you. Now, what I'll do is just kind of drop them in place, and I take my foot and step them in place so I get good seed soil contact, and it'll do a nice job. And then a little bit of fertilizer, starter fertilizer over the top of them, cover them over good, and I'm done. Water, that type of thing, and you're good to go until that potato begins to grow. Now, when it gets about to 6 to 8 inches tall, you'll want to start to hill it. If you have it in a row, you're just simply going to reach across the row with your hoe, your garden hoe, and draw soil toward that plant, covering, without totally covering, but covering a good portion of the plant. You'll want to mound up 6, 8 to maybe as much as 10 inches over a period of time. And that's going to allow that soil to be loose for these potatoes, new potatoes, to develop on the vine, and it won't have to be pushing aside tons and tons of soil, and it'll do a pretty good job. You'll generally do that in June sometime. If you want to do it later on again, that'll be great. When you're done with the hilling process, side dress. Again, garden fertilizer, just down both sides of the row, staying well out away from the root system. You don't have to get right under the canopy of the plant. I kind of go at the base of the hill, and that'll do a nice job for you. It's a great way to do it. If you want to plant in containers, super. If you got an old garbage can, knock the bottom out of it, knock some holes in the bottom of the pot, put about 8 or 10 inches of soil in there, place your potatoes in 6 to 8 inches apart, and cover with about 4 or 5 inches of soil. Then, during the course of the season, as that plant grows, you're going to continue to fill that container without covering the top until it's right up to the top. And what's going to happen is that stem is going to continue to grow upward. And as it grows upward, potatoes are going to come off to the side of that. And by the fall, when you want to harvest, you just simply tip the container over, roll it back and forth. If you're using a nice potting mix rather than garden soil, those potatoes will come out as clean as a whistle and do a fine job for you. Now, onions, quickly. 2 types, onion sets, onion plants. Onion sets look like this. Little bulbs, and they are indeed a bulb, and basically three different kinds. These are a Spanish type onion. You have white, yellow, and red. White is one that has dual purposes, and it can be used as a dry onion or as a scallion, a green pulling onion, and they're handled differently. If you are doing the scallions, and I love scallions, you're going to plant them deep. You're going to put 3 to 4 inches of soil over the top of that bulb. So you're going to set it well down in the soil. If you're doing container gardening, this is a perfect plant for container gardens. This is one you need to have close to the kitchen, so you can just go out and pull 3 or 4 whenever you need them and go from there. Now remember, if you're doing this, that's the only purpose you're going to use this onion for. It will not develop a nice dry onion for you. If you're going to make dry onions, that soil line wants to be right here. All I do is lay out the line and simply push them in, so when I'm all done planting, I can turn around and see the top of every one of those onions sticking out of the ground, and it'll do a fine job for you. Then again, like with potatoes, later on as they begin to grow, you're going to hill up over the top of it so they don't sun scald, do a fine job for you. Onions are heavy feeders. They like a lot of fertilizers. You'll fertilize them when you plant them. You'll fertilize them when they're 4 to 6 inches out of the ground. You'll fertilize them again when they're about a foot out of the ground, and they are heavy feeders of water. So you want to make sure you have sufficient amount of water there for it to do a nice job for you, and they'll do a great job. Now, onion plants are an entirely different story. They're started from seed. There are plants. We bring them in from a company in Texas, and they are different in that while you have the Spanish plants, you also have the other kinds of plants that are sweeter, not necessarily as good keeping, but a sweeter onion will do a fine job. They should be used only for dry onions. They will not be, because they immediately begin to set on the bulb, so they will not do a good job of getting the scallion that you want. And again, heavy feeders, set them just far enough in the ground so they don't fall over, and they'll do a nice job for you. A lot of people ask about Vidalia onions. Vidalia onion is a region in southeast Georgia, 13 counties, that produces the Vidalia onion. It is actually a yellow granix is the variety that is grown there. It is a short day onion. Onions have growing periods, so while it is available, it is one that's not going to perform all that well for you in the garden because it is a short day onion, and we either want day neutral or long day onions to do a nice job for you. Again, plant them shallow, draw soil up to them as you wish. This is one that, you may or may not want to use in a container garden, certainly be fine in a raised garden, but is more a long season onion that's going to do a nice job for you. Again, the onion plants, with the exception of the Spanish type, generally not as good at keepers, but are going to give you a marvelous onion and do just a fine job for you. So, you want to just kind of plan out how you want to do it. By the way, if you're using scallions, don't plant more than you're going to eat in a week. Buy some extra, put them in a paper bag. They'll rest on your counter for a long time. If you want to, put them in your fridge, right in that paper bag. They'll do a good job. And then just be doing weekly plantings of about what you're going to consume. And again, you're going to plant them deep, and that's the only purpose you're going to use for. That's the one I love to grow in containers, because I can pull out a bunch, I can turn right around and stick new little sets right back in the spot where the ones I just pulled out came from. Do a super job, make sure the fertilizer is there, make sure the moisture is there, and it'll do a good job. 2 great vegetables that everyone should have in their garden, the potatoes and the onions. If you have questions, give Del's Garden Center a shout. 1-800-359-1416. Go online, give us a holler. If you like this video, make sure you like it or do whatever it is that you do with videos. And we'll be doing another one real soon on starting seeds in the garden, and those that should be started very soon, all right? Till then, have a great time. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Until then, keep on believing, won't you? Bye now.